We are just north of Krakow, on the border of a community called Cianowice and Rzeplin. We are exactly in the borderline of what used to be Galicia. Galicia is a geographical term invented for the sake of the Austro-Hungarian Empire to call the northern parts of the Austro-Hungarian Empire from the half of 1800s into World War I. And as every borderland, especially borderland in Europe, this place sooner or later would collapse. This borderland in between Galicia on our right hand side and Russian Empire on our left hand side of course collapsed in World War I. Starting pretty much from here and heading another 600 kilometers direction east through Galicia, we would be following a line of World War I trenches, especially military activities of 1914 and 1915. And this is one of such military graves, or military mounds as they were called. Right now we have a couple of hundreds of such places which are very well documented and marked. Actually, the Austro-Hungarian army already in 1915 had within its ranks a special architectonical and administrative commission to deal with establishment of cemeteries, commemoration. This department had its own architectonical office, its own artistic office, and they were just visiting battlefields and trying to decide about the best memorial to be erected. Obviously here there was a small place, more of a military mound erected. It reads, "The majesty of death," put those people together into this common military grave. In November and December of 1914, and then it calls for memory and it calls for a warning to the next generations. So as I said, this is just one of a couple of hundreds of such graves. This one is very small. Some of them are as large as a couple of thousands of soldiers. Would you go about 70 kilometers east of Krakow into the territory of Gorlice, in which one of the largest battles of World War I would happen, we are talking there about cemeteries for dozens of thousands of soldiers of the so-called Gorlice offensive from early May of 1915. Interestingly enough, most of those cemeteries would have individual markers. Not this one, but most of them would have individual markers. Something which is called here the majesty of death in conditions of World War I was still individual. Even for the soldiers it was still individual, and in all of those cemeteries those are the Austro-Hungarian soldiers and Russian soldiers, in most cases buried together. Everything changed within the 20 years in between World War I and World War II, because World War II is proving that the death is no longer individual. The death becomes massive, the death becomes nameless, the death becomes genocide.